In this video, I'm going to show you how to create the app for finding the number of double X's in a given string. So start a new project. Let's call it double X. Now, what we're going to do, the first thing is we're going to change the label here, the title of the screen. So I'm going to go and change the screen 1 to double X. I'm going to say count double X. Now we want the user to be able to input something, so I'm going to bring a horizontal layout, change the width to be fill parent. Now I need a label here, so I'm going to drag and drop a label, and I'm going to change the text to be something like enter the text. Now I'm going to drag and drop a text box right here, and I'm going to change the name instead of text box 1 to something like input. And as I said in previous videos, it's better to specify what type of element is it, because it's a text box. I'm going to write txt at the end. So inside, when I'm writing the program, I know that input text represents the text box. Now let's bring a button on the screen. Let's change the text on the button to say submit. Now the same way, instead of button 1, I'm going to rename it to submit BTN. BTN stands for button, and then OK. The last thing I need is a notifier. So I'm going to go and drag and drop a notifier on the screen. And we are done with the screen. The only thing I have to fix is on the text box, the hint, just erase it. So everything is okay. Let's go and start writing the code. The first thing I have to do is I have to keep track of number of X's. So I need a variable. Let's call the variable to be sum. And I'm going to initially make it 0. Sum keeps track of the number of X's. Also, when you are checking to see how many X's you have, remember, upper or lower case doesn't matter. I just want to know how many X's I have. So what I need to do is that the input that the user enters, I have to change it to either uppercase or lowercase, and then compare it with, and then find out how many uppercase X's I have. Or you can change it to lowercase and see how many lowercase X's you have. So I'm going to introduce a new variable called a temp, and I'm going to change temp to blank initially when the app starts. Now I'm going to go to submit button, and I'm going to say when submit button is clicked. As soon as the submit button is clicked, I want to make the sum equal to 0. So this means I have to do the same thing for the new input text. So I'm going to set sum equal to 0. Also, I want to set temp to be the uppercase of the input text. So I'm going to set temp to be the uppercase. So I'm going to use the block which says uppercase. Now I have to go and find the block which is here, which says uppercase, but uppercase of the input text. So So I'm going to get this one and then text. Remember, the reason you're doing this is that the user may enter in different, uppercase and lowercase characters, and our app has to work. Doesn't matter if they enter it in uppercase or lowercase. Now what I do, I'm going to go through a loop, and for every character, I'm going to check if the two characters together are going to be XX. So I'm going to go through a loop. So I'm going to say for a number from 1 to. Now, here I'm not going to go to the end of the input text. I'm going to check it only for character 1 to length minus 1. So I'm going to go to length of, I'm going to explain what exactly I'm doing. I'm going to say length of temp. I'm not going to use this one anymore because I have changed it to uppercase, so I'm going to use temp now. So I'm going to go to the variable, bring length of temp minus 1. So I'm going to duplicate this guy and put it here. The reason I'm doing this one is that if you go to the end of the temp, then you're going to get an error because I want to get two characters at the time. And when you get to the end, there is no more characters left at the end of the string. Now, when I do this one, I have to check to see if that substring is equal to XX. So I'm going to use if, and to get the substring, I'm going to use the block which says segment. Now I want to check to see the segment of temp, so I duplicate temp. The start is going to be the number, so I get the number, and the length is going to be 2. And I'm going to check if this one is equal to uppercase of XX. To check strings, if the strings are equal, I have to use this compare text. So I'm going to use this one if this segment is equal to XX. So I duplicate this one and change this one to XX. Now, if this one is true, then I'm going to increment sum. So I'm going to set sum to be equal to sum plus 1. So I'm going to say get global sum plus 1. So I'm going to say plus 1. Now, let me just explain to you what exactly I've done so far. Sum is a variable keeps track of the number of x's in my input, double x in my input. Temp is a temporary variable which holds the uppercase of the input text. Now, when the button is clicked, I'm setting the sum, the number of double x's to 0, and then I'm going to change the input text, change it to uppercase and put it back in temp. The reason is that I do not care about the cases of the letters type. I want everything to be either uppercase or lowercase so I can check to see if I have two X's right after each other. Then I'm going to go through every character of the input, but I'm not going to go to the last character because I have to check against 2 characters. If I go to the last character, I'm going to get an error message. That's why I have length of global temp -1. And I do it, character by character. So I increment it by 1. Now, for every iteration of the loop, I'm going to compare the substring of length 2 starting at the number with XX in uppercase. Remember that I changed this one to uppercase. If you change this one to lowercase, okay, because remember, this block I can change it to lowercase, downcase. Then I'm going to compare it with lowercase xx here. If this is true, then I'm going to increment sum by 1. And at the end, I'm going to have my notifier, and I'm going to show the dialog message. Okay, let me see, where is that show message dialog. Okay, and then I'm going to have the message to be my sum, the title, I'm going to change it, let's say count xx or xx, and the button text to be okay. Now I've already started my emulator, so I can just go to my emulator and start testing the program. If I type, let's say XX, it has to give me 1 because there is only one double X, and it gives me 1 1. If I type XX uppercase X, it has to give me 2 because remember, overlapping is acceptable. So there is one double X and then there is another double X. So it has to give me 2, which is gives me 2. Now let's type 0x. It has to give me again still 2. And the last test, let's do AB XX. So it has to give me 3 this time, which is 3.